It was reported that the Crystal Lake series, fronted by showrunner Bryan Fuller, produced by A24, set to air on Peacock next year, was canceled. Now, we are hearing that from Bloody Disgusting 2 days ago, Crystal Lake, A24 has not pulled the plug on their Friday the 13th series. We'll go through this in a couple different articles. We have some quotes from Bryan Fuller, who has left the show, and I am kind of saddened by that because he did such a great job with Hannibal back on NBC about 10, 11 years ago that he really could have, done something well here and brought this series to the small screen and expanded on the lore. But let's take a look what this article says from Bloody Disgusting. In the wake of several years worth of legal troubles, the Voorhees family was finally set to return in a new Friday the 13th television series from A24, Peacock, and Bryan Fuller, titled Crystal Lake. But a report this week has cast doubt on the show happening at all. Jeff Snyder reported in his newsletter, The Insnider, late last night that A24 has pulled the plug on the Crystal Lake series, which was due to begin filming sometime this year. Snyder writes in last night's exclusive report, it's unclear whether this is a permanent decision or a temporary one, as A24 had no comment. Perhaps Peacock will help the trades shed more light on this project, which was announced back in 2022. According to Bloody Disgusting sources, A24 has not killed off Crystal Lake at this time. We have confirmed the show is still happening, but there is indeed some retooling of the project happening behind the scenes. We're digging for more info. Stay tuned. From Bryan Fuller. Bryan Fuller breaks his silence on Crystal Lake cancellation rumors, addresses Friday the 13th prequel future. Bryan Fuller shared an update on the Friday the 13th prequel series Crystal Lake, which was reported to have been canceled by A24, despite rumors shared by Jeff Snyder in his Insnider newsletters we covered in the Bloody Disgusting article. The series is very much alive at Peacock, but without Fuller as showrunner, with the production team deciding to take a different approach to the one suggested by the Hannibal creator. Peacock originally greenlit Crystal Lake as a straight-to-series order in October of 2022, and I was so excited when that announcement came. Along with it came all the speculating. What were we going to get? How were we going to see Jason? Who were they going to show? When would it be set? And then to have the rug pulled out like this is so just... It's disheartening as a Friday the 13th, super fan. It was going to delve into the origins of the infamous Camp Crystal Lake before it became the setting for Jason Voorhees' many killing sprees. With the rights to Friday the 13th franchise in a tangled mess, it has been 15 years since a new edition. And we went through that and talked about how Victor Miller and Mark Toberoff had the TV rights. Sean Cunningham could still do the film rights, which... we discussed that in another video when he was working on another film talking about doing a Friday the 13th movie, which, as long as they set it in the 80s, I'm all for it. If we get a series and a movie, you know what? I know people are like, well, this isn't going to be good. I at this point, I just want to see what they have to offer. And we'll touch on where the franchise is and some possible reasons why Bryan Fuller may have departed the show, which stem from a couple videos I did about 5 months ago. Fuller confirmed himself today that Crystal Lake is still coming to Peacock, but A24 have decided to take the project in a different direction. Adapting classic horror is something I have some experience with. These shows require a vision that elevates and transforms, as well as delivers what audiences have come to expect, which is an ambitious and risky endeavor. It requires people to take the leap with me. When it works, as with Hannibal, the results can be powerful for the storytellers and the audience. I couldn't be more proud of the work my co-showrunner, Jim Danger Gray, and I were able to accomplish with our brilliant writing staff, despite the challenges we faced. For reasons beyond our control, A24 has elected to go a different way with the material. We hope the final product will be something that Friday the 13th fans all over the world will enjoy. And Creepy Duck Design, who did some of the concept artwork that we saw circulating online and has done many movie posters like mock-ups, obviously fan art. I said, sorry, Bryan, wish you had a chance to create your original vision with this. Hannibal was insanely good. Yeah, I am saddened by this, but let's go over to the Deadline article that dropped yesterday. Fuller exits Friday the 13th prequel series, search for new showrunner underway. And here's a little more on the rights situation in this article, what I want you to take away from this. The legal case, which was decided by the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, you can read here, saw Miller win the rights to the character that he created after a copyright termination battle. The original producers of the film, Horror Inc., which includes Barsamian, had argued Miller's involvement was work for hire, but a judge ruled that it wasn't. The case cleared the way for Miller to license a prequel series. This dispute concerns whether, for Copyright Act purposes, the screenwriter, Victor Miller, was an employee or independent contractor of the film production company Manny Inc. in 1979, when Miller wrote the screenplay for the landmark horror film Friday the 13th, released in 1980. Almost 40 years later, in 2016, Miller gave notice to Manny purporting to terminate its copyright under the authority vested in authors by Section 203 of the Act. If Miller was Manny's employee when he wrote the screenplay, then it is a work made for hire under the Act. Manny, not Miller, owns the screenplay, and Miller's notice is of no effect. Alternatively, if Miller was an independent contractor vis-a-vis Manny when he wrote the screenplay, and if certain other conditions are satisfied, then Miller is entitled to terminate Manny's and its successor's rights as author to reclaim his own. Manny argues primarily that Miller's membership in the Writers Guild of America East, Inc., and Manny's participation in the producers' collective bargaining agreement with the WGA in the same period established that Miller was Manny's employee for Copyright Act purposes. We reject that argument and conclude that Miller was an independent contractor when he wrote the screenplay and therefore is entitled to authorship rights. Accordingly, the notice of termination that he gave under Section 203 is effective as to Manny and its successors. We therefore affirm the district court's order granting summary judgment to Miller. Affirmed. I am saddened. I am saddened by this. It was a rather unfortunate turn of events that transpired this way. And I can only hope that we will see this show and it will be done well with the love and care that it deserves. Now, Bryan Fuller's work speaks for itself. Now, speaking of Bryan Fuller, this is what I wanted to get into. Now, Bryan Fuller, there were allegations, and I spoke about this a little bit earlier, and I said I'd come back to it, and we're circling back, like, not like Karine Jean-Pierre, but we're just circling, or no, that was Jen Psaki. I'm getting my White House press secretaries wrong here. We'll just edit this out. We're circling back to the Bryan Fuller situation because there was allegations made by Sam Weinman of misconduct by Fuller on the set of the AMC series Queer for Fear. This surfaced on November 2nd of last year. Like I said, I did a couple of videos. We've talked about it on the Monday Night Show, back when it was going in Raw, and now Nitro. We've spoke about it. And I don't know if this is playing any sort of role in Fuller leaving the show. I have no idea. I can't confirm it. I don't have sources. I wish I did, because I would really like to know if this played a role in him removing himself, recusing himself, as it were, from this project. And if there's no validity to that, is there a possibility of him coming back? I don't think so at this point. Fuller's gone. They're going to have to move forward and find a new showrunner, because I don't want this to get stuck in development hell. I want Friday the 13th content. I do. I'm starving for more of this. I love the original 8 movies. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, there's more than that. Well, is there though? So, yeah, I don't know if the Sam Weinman lawsuit is playing into Fuller's decision to leave or not. I would hope it is just a nothing burger and Bryan Fuller didn't do anything wrong. But
Weird. It's Hollywood, baby.
There is some great Friday the 13th out there that's come out in the last couple years, and that is Womp Stomp Productions with Never Hike Alone, Never Hike in the Snow, and Never Hike Alone 2. These movies are well done. They look professional. They look polished. They have gotten exponentially better since the first one. And I'm not knocking the first one at all. It was wonderful. I remember when that came out, and I think it was 2019, 2018, just being excited. Like, somebody's going to make a quality because I saw the trailer for it, and it's like, wow. And with like a 4-person cast, they made this extremely tense, and it was fun. And then you get Tom Matthews in the end of it, and he came back for Never Hike Alone 2, and Vincent Gustafaro.
Wherever the red dot goes, you bang.
So it is possible to do this, and there's people out there that love this franchise and want to see it do well. This is what I'm wondering, and I've been pontificating this in my head, and I know I've mentioned it to a couple of my friends, is like, why doesn't one of these bigger studios give the guys from Womp Stomp a chance and say, hey, let's hire you to do that? Obviously there's the experience thing with a major production, but what have you got to lose at this point? Give them a couple $1 million budget for a movie and let them go nuts. Make a movie. They've proven their worth. They've shown what they can do on a smaller scale. I think if you gave them a bigger scale and some parameters to work in, like, the one gripe that I have, and it really didn't factor in that much into theirs, was I want it to be in the 80s. And that's what I liked about this prequel series, was I feel they were going to keep it because it was a prequel, obviously, but then they said remakeable, and they were going to, and I was kind of hoping, okay, so we're going to get, some old stuff and some new stuff by that. I want them to stay in the 80s, ambiguously in the 80s. Do not leave that decade. At the earliest, you go back to your, obviously, like, you can flash back to like the 50s because there were things happening at the camp then that were negative. The water and the fires and things of that ilk that were happening. So you could really use that to bring it into your 1980s and Pamela and Jason, and there you go. And it can just live there and stay in that time period, because that takes a lot of the modern conveniences and plot contrivances and MacGuffins out of the equation completely and lets you focus on a good, fun slasher, which is what Friday the 13th, past the very first one, still the first one is a slasher, obviously, but we just didn't get Jason, we had Pamela. So, and the last thing I want to talk about is Adrian King was supposed to come back for this. Fingers crossed, Adrian King still comes back, and whoever, they don't change it to where, because there's the only thing I can see her doing, because Alice Hardy was killed off in the second one, the beginning, was for her to play the Betsy Palmer role of Pamela Voorhees, and fingers crossed that still happens. I'm going to remain optimistic, folks. I know. In a day and age when entertainment leaves us very, very pessimistic and disillusioned with the quality of the things that we get, I'm still optimistic about this, about Friday the 13th, getting something on the mainstream level that is good and fun and is a homage to the original. That's all I can hope for, folks. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do all the YouTube things. I will catch you guys on the next one.